Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody, this is Paranormal Karen for real this time. I had started this a minute ago, and I was talking with my guest, Jeff Thill, and wasn't hitting record. So now that I've gotten really how a podcast works, welcome to Paranormal Karen. Folks, it's August, I think. You'll see me at the Portland, Maine Comedy Festival. I'll see you in September somewhere else. Never mind, we'll get to all that. But I'm taping this podcast today, literally on the same day that Jeff Thill's first podcast with me. If you listen all the time, I know you were loved it. I looked at the numbers that were already up, way up high on the downloads. And I couldn't wait to have him on again. We left it last time ready to talk about the moon landing and what's going on with that. So I'm not even going to waste time. Jeff, tell me one thing first, though. Tell everybody where they can find your web series again, the funny one that I love.
Oh, sure, you guys. So, this is a little hard to get your head around because although I'm talking about some stuff that's kind of serious and also kind of hard to believe until maybe I give you some more facts. The reality is, like Karen, I also do comedy and a lot of writing. And so I do have a sci-fi comedy web series. I love sci-fi, total nerd, Comic-Con, all that stuff. It's called Majestic 12. Anybody that is kind of hip to the UFO world knows who Majestic 12 is. This is a little fun project that I've been working on for about a year now. These are just little 3-minute episodes, and you can catch it on YouTube, Majestic 12 web series. And so right now we're wrapping up the first season. We just are finishing up now our 13th episode. We're about to post our 10th. Check it out, guys. It's good for a quick laugh. And here's the great news. You can watch the whole season in about 27 minutes.
That's what our attention span is. But it is great. And the production value is fantastic. And it's funny. And Dean is great. Everybody's great on it. Mark, your lead guy, everybody's great. And I'm going to put a link to that in the notes, everybody. So now, and how about a Jeff Thill, Jessa Reed, Karen Rontowski, Sonia King comedy tour, huh? Hopefully we can fill some seats one day. That would be super fun to go on the road with you.
That would be amazing. That would be so much fun. We could really, do the comedy and then mix in the conspiracies, the paranormal. I would love that. Yep.
Oh yeah, we could do a panel. Oh, we got to work on this. All right, everyone, it's up to you to share my podcast so I get a bunch more listeners so we can do that. So Jeff, last time, let me see if I can start it without starting in the middle for people if they just are tuning in for the first time. You and I were talking about going to the moon, and we had talked about how with the UFOs, I'm going to let you start. Do you think you got a good starting point there?
Sure. Okay. Sure. So just to rewind, you guys, Karen and I met, back in the 90s at the Comedy Store in La Jolla, and one of my buddies said to me, "Hey, Jeff, you want some good material? You should go to these UFO conventions. These are some pretty crazy people." And he wasn't wrong. I did go to a few of them, and I have to say, I may be a little embarrassed at this point, but I did use some of the stories of some of these UFO experiencers as fodder on stage, okay. And I was getting some pretty good material. Until this one guy who was an emergency room physician named Dr. Greer started talking about the fact that he had slowly over time, unwillingly really, accidentally stumbled onto high-level government and military and government, witnesses to the UFO phenomenon and to hidden technologies, and it started to turn into this large story, and they all kind of wanted to come forward, and they wanted a safe haven to be able to do that, and he was kind of the conduit. And he was looking for someone to edit together all of this witness testimony that he was starting to amass. And again, you guys, these aren't ranchers out in Montana that got abducted by an alien. And I'm not belittling that, by the way. I think the abduction phenomenon probably is real. But
it had that stereotype for a long time.
Of course. And so these are folks, you guys, that were, the head of the FAA, a brigadier general, guys that were working on nuclear aircraft carriers and facilities that had nuclear missiles, right? So these are high-level military witnesses with nothing to gain, everything to lose, some of them breaking security oaths to tell their story about experiences with, unidentified phenomenon, as well as the whole history of why this was covered up, how it was covered up. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. You have my attention. I'm not even thinking this is very funny. Look, if you want me, I said this to Dr. Greer, if you want me to help you, because I work in Hollywood and I edit, for a living, I would be happy to help you edit all this witness testimony together. He said, that would be great, Jeff. Give me your address. I forgot all about it, you guys. And then flash forward, I got an invitation to come to his house, and I got a chance to meet some of these guys. I flew out back east, to meet with him, and 11 or 12 of the witnesses, and my mind was blown. These were real people. I went back home completely shocked and stunned, and about a month later, a box showed up at my door, ding dong, and it was hundreds of hours of government and military witness testimony to the fact that aliens, UFOs, and all this technology is real. And it's been like this for decades.
And it's interesting because I talked to Jessa, because Jessa was an abductee, but not in a bad way, in a good way. And it's interesting that this is almost the flip side. And you know what? UFOs have been getting a lot of attention all of a sudden. I mean,
they really have. You're right, Karen.
Didn't they do a show on Vice just a little bit ago? Was it Vice or something like that? They just did a show on UFOs. It's constantly in the newspaper now, like they're trying to kind of quote break it to us.
Yeah, they're now having no issues whatsoever breaking stories over the news wires about recordings of military personnel tracking and witnessing UFO activity, airports, civilians. You see these reports are now becoming more mainstream. And, in the old days, Karen, whenever they did a UFO report, it was always little green men from outer space. We'll take a look at 11 plus what's killing you in your kitchen, right? It was always this super silly downplay. Not that I'm not interested in what's killing me in my kitchen. That's also important. But
it's your wife. Thank you very much.
But now there's a lot less sarcasm, and it's being treated a lot more seriously. So now I was telling Karen, you guys, that there's a punchline to all of this. The reason that this has been kept secret, once we understand, what these guys are telling us, these witnesses, is a very interesting one, which we can get into. But part of the story is the moon. And so you can imagine a month or two goes by. I haven't spoken to Dr. Greer. I'm kind of blown away by the witnesses. And then these tapes show up. I start going through them, and holy moly, right? All these stories about how extraterrestrial activity, always centering around nuclear facilities, nuclear bases, nuclear missiles, nuclear carriers. They have a strong interest in that. And we also got testimony from NASA contracted employees, as well as folks who were in and around NASA during the time that we were trying to find a landing spot for the first moon landing. And so I guess that kind of segues us, Karen, into what we were going to talk about today, right? The moon.
Right, the moon.
Yeah. So when it comes to the moon, you guys, this took me a while to piece together the whole story. I tried to keep an open mind and not jump to conclusions here.
Right, because the faking the moon landing is that's not even, you know what I mean? Like even amongst conspiracy theorists, sometimes that's the one where they go, no, that didn't happen.
That the moon landing didn't happen,
or whatever. Whenever it comes to the moon, right, or getting there, or whatever. The moon seems to be its own entity of measure of craziness for people that don't believe.
Sure, and I would say that you have these different levels of craziness, right? And I would say crazy number one would be flat Earth, right? Most people would think flat Earth is about the craziest thing. And then I think the second craziest thing for regular folks who don't have a conspiratorial mind would be that there was somehow something different happening on 9/11. That would be probably the next one where you would say, gosh, that's pretty crazy,
right?
Very conspiratorial. And then I think the moon maybe falls in third. I don't even know how I'm ranking these, Karen. I feel like I'm the Casey Kasem of
the top 40.
Coming up next, the moon landing. I has made its number 3 tonight.
And I have to say, I believe everything. The only one that hangs me up is the Jersey Devil, because I've been to Jersey, and there's that is seriously the only one where I'm like, I don't think so. But yes, you're right.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, the moon was the one that's real tricky. So here's initially, you guys. Most of us, even folks that are listening right now that have never wanted to hear about the moon landing being possibly faked, or the moon landings, excuse me. Most of us have heard at least some of what the conspiracy theorists say, right?
Right.
Gosh, how could that flag be waving on the moon's surface when there's no wind? Why aren't there any stars in the background? Things like that. Now, to the anti-hoaxers, right, the folks that say the moon landing absolutely did take place, or the moon landings, they have a point as well. For everything the conspiracy theorists say, there is a equal and plausible explanation to debunk the people that think it's a hoax, right? So you can see why this is an age-old, chocolate versus peanut butter. I don't know. It's like just this tug of war that never seems to be won by anybody, right? There's a logical explanation.
Yeah, you talked about this last time about how, there's certain generals. Oh, if there was UFOs, I'd know that everybody doesn't know. It's buried layers and layers. And I always feel like that is the same thing with a conspiracy, that there's always it was a weather balloon. It was everything's a weather balloon or something like that. There's always some sort of a thing, but okay, but go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Yeah, no, you're totally correct. So, my point in this is, for those of you out there that are skeptical, I'm with you. I totally get it. And I want to preface that before I tell you this crazy story. However, I've learned to keep my mind open, and here's why. After watching over 100 hours of witness testimony and editing it myself for this thing called the Disclosure Project, which you can find all over YouTube if you want to see it, and we actually had a press briefing in Washington, D.C. back in the day, I have learned exactly plausible explanation as to how all of this is possible. Before we get to the moon landing, again, question number 1, how could all of this nonsense be kept secret? Why in the world, or how in the world, could you keep all the aliens and UFOs and all that stuff secret? It's very easy. There is, within the government, special access projects. Okay. These are projects that go outside of the normal government. The president is not aware of a lot of the stuff. It's need to know. It's the military married to private corporations. The corporations can keep the military away from certain channels under corporate privileges, and vice versa. We can use national security to keep some of these corporate secrets. So as soon as the military married the corporations, they were able to get sent to them unacknowledged special access money. This is money that you and I have given without realizing it. And Congress and the Senate and the House and everybody's given to these guys to the tunes of billions and billions of dollars without it ever getting voted on. These are black ops projects.
Okay. So, and also sort of an example of a different example would be when we took our troops out of, we raided Kuwait. When we took our troops out of Kuwait, we hired Blackwater, because Blackwater could do what our soldiers couldn't do. Correct?
Sure. Not too dissimilar to that at all. So imagine, you guys, that since the 1940s, right around the time of Roswell and some other incidents where, yes, indeed, alien, or as we say in the government, right, foreign technology was discovered and backwards engineered, meaning they were able to take it apart and start to get advances from it. This went deep, 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 right, outside of the government's purview. And so now we have these black budgets. And if you want to check for yourself, you can type in black budget General Accounting Office. The United States' General Accounting Office comes up billions and billions and billions of dollars short every year to money that just sort of disappears into black budget projects. Now, so what does that mean? How could the government keep this secret? They're not. There's your answer. The government, the average Joe, including the president, secretary of state, secretary of defense, and many of the generals, know nothing about any of this. Okay? It's all need to know. Okay. There are certain people that know about it and projects, but those are all those are all hidden under the guise of national security. And even the people that are in those projects, Karen, don't know the whole story. Each person knows a separate section of it, right? That's very common.
Right. That's like how the CIA works.
Right. And well, when you have companies like Raytheon and these other military industrial complex companies,
Martin.
That's very common, right? Yeah, Lockheed Martin. Nobody knows the whole story. So sounds crazy, but your government largely doesn't know about this. So when they say we don't think UFOs are real, I promise we're not hiding anything from you, for the most part, that's true. They're not. They don't know. Yet, as soon as these witnesses started revealing this to us, and these are all people that haven't met each other, that have nothing to gain, all telling us the same basic story, we started piecing together. Here we go, right? The aliens, as we had learned, have super technology that does not run on fossil fuels, requires no fuel. You can power a house or a city with a device that's no bigger than a walk-in closet that has no moving parts and is non-polluting. Now, that's a big problem. Once you start to admit this to the public, you start to get into the technology, then you start to lose control of the world, right? Mm-hmm. Because suddenly third world countries have instant access to free energy, anti-gravity, and they can zip around instantly to different points in space. And that's a military threat, right? So you can see why the onion can't ever be peeled.
Right. And in a capitalist society, which we have, which I don't know if we're still there, but or we're going to not be there, but as the sort of world power that we used to be, we don't want everybody to have what we have.
Right. And again, you guys, largely most people don't know about this. It's small factions. And so a lot of these witnesses ran into these black ops guys and barely survived with their lives.
Before we get to black ops guys and everything, I have two questions. I want to go back one thing. Sure. So this may be an opinion question, and I know you do facts. You're really good with facts, better than opinion. But so Bill Clinton went in and said, "Are there aliens?" That was like one of the first things he said. Do you think he knew?
No.
Too complicated to tell him?
I think like a Dr. Greer, Bill Clinton certainly travels in circles. And a lot of these guys know something. Now, keep in mind, you guys, a general will say something like, if this were all true, believe me, I would know about it. I have a 50-year career in the military or whatever. I would know. The problem is that's an ego.
Right. And also, Trump knows.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And sorry, your phone must have clicked out for a second. And Trump knowing, or announcing or sort of getting credit for acknowledging it is not what we're talking about. He might say, okay, we know there's UFOs and here's a little, we're going to let go of these disclosed files for a little bit, but that's not what we're talking about.
Well, no, that's not what we're talking about. And by the way, Trump is a different kind of, situation because that's the first president that I can see in a long time where it would actually make sense for them to start feeding him information. And here's why. One of the great tricks, and this is an old CIA or trick, is to have this thing called plausible deniability. And so what that means is you feed actual, true, incredible, sensitive, top secret information to somebody that has a reputation for being erratic, crazy, nuts, flies off the handle, is emotionally challenged, has said all kinds of incredible things before, has been caught multiple times in lies, and you let them reveal your secrets so that now those secrets are out in the open and they're completely made fun of by everybody else. Oh, right. I've already heard that stupid story. That's what that dumbass Trump said, right? So
right.
That's the first time that I could actually see maybe making sense to send him some information and let him go blah, blah, blah and tweet about it because he doesn't have a lot of credibility. But That's not what I'm talking about.
But now, and also that is what they did at the Denver airport. People figured out what was going on, so they made with all this craziness out there, they made a fake talking gargoyle that was like a cartoon that would make people laugh. So they didn't think about what's going on there.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Of let's play it out. It's kind of called Let the Baby Have Its Bottle.
Oh.
So, if you want to say crazy things, let's go ahead and play that game with you. Now we can all laugh. Now do we all think it's silly? Good. Now we can move on. And nobody believes it.
Great. Yeah. And I'm going to take a break right here. Hold your thought, Jeff, and we'll be right back. I have a new favorite thing. It's my ring from Copper Case Jewelry. I did a show in Colorado, met a wonderful young man named Casey who told me he made crystal jewelry. So I'm in. That's all I had to hear. He makes raw crystal jewelry using copper electroformulist techniques. Do I know what that means? No. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing those words correctly. All I know is I love the final product. It has become my favorite ring. And I know you're thinking, crystal ring, that sounds kind of clunky and sharp. Is it going to be heavy, or is it going to get caught on my sleeve every time I put my coat on? Absolutely not. It is the most delicate, perfect size ring. I even wear it through yoga, and it's uncomfortable to wear jewelry in yoga. Not this. You got to check out Casey's pieces. Go to @29 Copper Case on Instagram, and you can see all his new work. You can also email him if you want something special at 29coppercase@gmail.com. Check it out. I know you're going to love it. Okay. So Jeff, before I cut you off, you were talking about black ops, and I'm going to say, just to redefine that, when you say black ops, you mean the people that know this is going on, but don't have all the pieces?
Correct. These are, when I say black, I mean off the grid. I mean no paper trail. Money just shows up where it needs to go, and these projects exist. Okay, and so these are folks that basically operate in the shadows. It's basically a shadow government, if you will. But each member or each arm or wing or section of it don't have the whole story, right? And that's how it's meant to be designed. Now, what does all this have to do with the moon? And again, I wanted to live up to the promise of the title of this episode, of course.
I just have to say, I knew three guys that work for the CIA, and one guy was the only one that talked about, and literally his job was to be ready to carry a suitcase to a different location. And that was all he did. And he didn't know what was in the suitcase. And I thought, and the other guy that probably picks up the suitcase, he doesn't know. It was pretty fascinating, even though it was nothing. He knows nothing. Right. So, okay.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. So imagine now. So I've painted a picture for you guys that I'm going to ask you to please absorb. Please take the red pill for just 1 second and indulge me here. Okay.
Yep.
For the last, let's see, the 40s, that's 60s. So for the last 70 to 80 years, we have known about and had access to extraterrestrial technology. By the time that we were ready to go to the moon, Black Ops, the other secret program, already had technology that could go to and from the moon with no problem. I know that sounds like I just, that's a silly episode of Twilight Zone, or I just made up some crazy story. But for the sake of time, I'm going to have you
go with us.
Wrap your head around that. Yeah,
this is a go with it crowd.
This is a go. Okay, good, excellent. So you have Kennedy, President Kennedy, saying we're going to go to the moon and we want to do it by this date. Okay, and he is not in the loop. Okay,
right.
So all the folks at NASA are actual hardworking folks, real engineers, you guys. So moon landing, right? We never went to the moon. And then the folks that say, yes, we did, always have a very legitimate a statement, which is this: how hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that were somehow involved in the moon landing, or at least the tens of thousands, I think it was over 100,000 when you add it all up,
right?
How could they all be keeping a secret? Again, they're not keeping a secret. They weren't involved. It only involved an extremely small number of people. Let me explain. So the Kennedy says, let's go to the moon. The people at NASA say, great, this is a really expensive government contract. We love it. This is going to cost billions of dollars. Excellent. This is what we love to do. Everybody builds the the hardware, the software, in quotes, by the way. I'd hardly call it software. But anyway, and everyone does their best, right, to make some amazing equipment and get these astronauts trained. And there you go. Now, here's what happens. Secretly, the other side of things, the Black Ops side of things, knows that we can already go to the moon very easily, okay? And they already know something that we don't know. They already know that the moon is a very anomalous object. What I mean by that is there's already a presence there. Okay.
Okay. That's
so
what's
the
going to be
moon,
my next question. Okay.
The
great.
moon has, and for those of you that don't know, and this is a very simple lesson, you probably learned this in grade school. If you didn't, maybe college or the internet. The moon is very unusual in that its orbit is a little bit strange. It only ever shows us one side of itself. It doesn't fully rotate. So we here on Earth never see what is known as the far side. Well, actually, and just a little fun trivia, kind of annoying trivia, but it's not even really the dark side because the sun does hit that side of the moon. It's really the far side, kind of like a Gary Larson. Think Gary Larson, right? So it's the far side, right, guys? So the far side of the moon is something that we never see here on Earth. And so the folks that had already been there long before 1969, long before Apollo 11, or even the Mercury program or Gemini or anything, right? They all know that we already have stuff on the moon. There's already a extraterrestrial presence. There's structures, and it's basically a base. Okay.
And so this is great when you're done because this was going to be one of my questions. Go ahead. Okay.
Okay. Now again, so Jeff, if I'm a person at home right now listening to this, I'm thinking, Jeff, you've already taken the most outrageous conspiracy theory on the planet, and now you're making it 100 times more outrageous.
Yeah.
And by the way, I get it. I feel you. I understand why you're skeptical, but why not? You've already tuned in and you're binge watching it. So let's listen to the rest. Okay. So they already know that, and they aren't super stoked about us going there, right? Especially since there's an awkward moment where we, NASA, let's say that space program has sent a probe to circle the moon and find a landing spot that would be suitable for Apollo 11. Well, it starts to send back data, and it's doing these circles around the moon, Karen, and each circle is basically a strip of 35 millimeter film. And down below at the receiving center, they are receiving these transmissions, and they are developing 35 millimeter film in these long strips, and they're putting them all together like a puzzle to create kind of a mosaic. And there's a special sensitive piece of equipment back then that's doing this in a NSA controlled facility. Okay. And so here's what happens. One of our disclosure witnesses is an Air Force. He's in the Air Force, right? He has a top secret clearance.
Yeah.
He's also familiar with and an expert on this particular type of photographic equipment. The equipment goes down, and they desperately need to continue to, develop the film, get the data. So because he's got a top secret clearance, they call him in, and he comes to the facility, and he is checked through, and he notices there's a lot of activity, right? And at the time, he thought, this is really strange. I'm seeing scientists from what appear to be scientists, people in lab coats all over the place, lots of hustling and bustling, lots of people talking to each other. What's all the fuss, I wonder? And he's going through multiple security checks. He finally gets to this piece of equipment, and he goes inside this little room, and there's a gentleman already there who is, I think, one or two ranks below him. And so the witness takes a look at it. He says, gosh, I know exactly what's wrong. He tells the MPs or the security that are there, and they say, fine, we'll wait here. We're going to come back. And they had to get some other piece of equipment or whatever. So for a moment anyway, he's alone with this gentleman who's one or two ranks below him. And
he doesn't know him, I'm assuming.
They don't know each other. And the gentleman who was already stationed there, the gentleman who was already working on the equipment, says to our witness, whose name is Carl Wolf, he says, they found a base on the far side of the moon. And of course, Carl thinks it's a joke. And what do you mean, a base? Yeah, they found a base on the far side of the moon. Take a look. And again, not really believing that what he's seeing is what he's seeing, Carl takes a look, and sure enough, he can see all kinds of artificial structures on the far side. Domes, large towers, what look like, blocky rectangular shaped structures. And these are massive. Based on the scale of what he's looking at, these are massive.
And I don't want to jump forward, but a quick question on this. So I'm going to go back a second. So I tried to explain this to someone about the moon. Not only are you right about the moon doesn't, there was something else somebody once told me once, that the moon blocks the sun, or there's something about that it's so perfectly placed. Maybe that's just in an eclipse, but it's so perfectly placed that it's almost like, is it a moon, or is it what is it? You know what I mean? I'm sure we'll get to that. What is it made of?
Yeah, sure. Is it an artificial structure is maybe the better question.
Right.
So yeah, a little too perfect. So Carl, suddenly, being a military man, experienced, right? Mm-hmm. He's able to fix the machine, but for the rest of the time that he's there, he shuts his mouth because he realizes that I don't know exactly what's happening here other than I'm seeing artificial structures. I also know that I'm going to be in deep, what? This is way, way above my pay grade. I may have already stepped in it, and this could be bad for my career, and I don't know if I was even supposed to be told that.
And somebody's
that's a huge problem in the military.
Eye. Okay.
Huge problem in the military when you're let in on information that you don't have, permission or access to. So,
interesting. I never even thought of that as an accident.
My goodness. Bad news. So he puts his head down and does the rest of his work and doesn't want to talk about it. Meanwhile, he thinks that when he goes home in the next week or so, there's going to be on the news, my God, guess what? They've discovered artificial structures on the moon. Can you believe it? Amazing. And of course, that never happens. Okay. Right. So now what we have, you guys, is the mainstream space agency, not the Black Ops guys, the mainstream space agency using antiquated equipment, and God bless them, building an Apollo capsule and trying to do their best to get to the moon and building this kind of clunky probe that goes around the moon. They discover what we already knew, that there's an alien presence on the moon. Okay. So this presents a little bit of a problem. Okay. So again, only sections are allowed to know the information. It's kept quiet. Not all of NASA ever found out about it. Okay. So they didn't have to keep it a secret. And please, guys, let's back up a second. Every single space mission, I don't want you guys to be naive out there. Every time they launched a shuttle, every time they go to the International Space Station, every time that a space mission has ever happened, there is a military aspect to it. There is always a military mission or some other military agenda. There's oftentimes even military astronauts that you guys are unaware of that go along on these missions.
Okay, so wait a minute. Explain that a little bit. Do you mean and Russia, did Russia make it to the moon?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing about me, Jeff Thill. I can only tell you what I heard or know. I would just be guessing on that. But I can tell you, don't be naive, right? So on the International Space Station, there's a military presence and military things happen. And there's definitely military control over the NASA missions and a military aspect to it.
Now, when you say a military aspect, do you mean we're going after something, or we're starting a war, or you just mean...
But in some cases, if it's near Earth orbit, then that would be spy satellites and reconnaissance and things like that.
Got it. Okay.
When it comes to the moon missions, it would definitely be the alien presence.
Okay, got it.
So please understand that every single astronaut that is currently living, that ever touched foot on the moon or was part of a moon mission, every single one of them is carrying one secret. Okay. The secret is they know about the presence on the far side of the moon. Every one of them does. They all have kept a secret for a long time. Okay?
That was the interesting thing that I just sort of found out about that I was going to, okay, got it. Perfect.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean that they didn't all set foot on it. Okay, so now about the moon conspiracy. Did we go to the moon or did we not? Yes, we did, but let me clarify. The first mission, Apollo 11, did not go to the moon. Period. End of story. Over. There's absolutely, for sure, done deal, like case closed. They did not go to the moon. But the technology we created did get men to the moon after that. And, there's all these conspiracies about the Van Allen radiation belts, all that stuff. You're right. It's bad equipment. It was dangerous. They did get there. But they were also, under the watchful eye and the guidance of black ops. So, and every single astronaut that landed on the moon after Apollo 11 knows all about the alien presence. Now, so what happened to Apollo 11, you might be asking? Why did they not go to the moon? Okay.
And this is Buzz Aldrin, right?
This would be Buzz Aldrin. Uh-huh.
And
and Neil Armstrong, right?
And Neil Armstrong. Buzz Aldrin, in the end, seems to be leaking a little bit in odd ways.
Yes. So we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
Time permitting, I'll definitely get into that. And so here's what happened. There was a couple things. Number one, as Gus Grissom, who was an astronaut who died in the Apollo 1 fire on the launch pad with two other astronauts, all great men, they learned very quickly that NASA was way, way behind schedule, not ready to do this, way too many safety problems. And in the case of poor Gus Grissom and his fellow astronauts, Chapman and White, they died and burned alive basically on the launch pad during a test mission just because of a terrible hatch design, pure oxygen, a spark, all that stuff. Okay. So NASA just wasn't ready, let alone the fact that it's kind of Flintstone technology to get you anyway, right? Get you there anyway.
And so, that's very upsetting. They play that guy being, there was something I was watching where they played the video or the, footage of one of the guys in the hatch. And it was awful. It was awful.
Oh, terrible. So, and Grissom knew and suspected for a while there that NASA wasn't ready and there was some BS going on. So they weren't ready, but the pressure was on. We had to get a guy on the moon. We had to beat these Russians. This is the height of the Cold War, right? This is a big deal. So what they did was they faked the first one. And now keep in mind, folks, faking it wasn't as hard as you think. It doesn't mean that everyone on the ground at NASA was in on it. Far from it. Only a very, very few people were in on it. So they were sending back to NASA fake telemetry so that it looked like they were making it to the moon. And here's exactly what they did. They went into a Earth orbit, and they faked it, that they went to the moon. They had all the stuff had already been pre-filmed, and everything was just fed back to NASA. And all NASA's getting back then, guys, is telemetry and some really shitty video feeds. Okay,
right.
If you watch right now what standard def looks like versus high def, and then you take standard def and add a bunch of grain and make it jumpy and weird, that's what they saw. It was so easy to fake that video footage. It's unimaginable, right? Because it's so blurry and so crappy. They basically took the feed, broadcast it, then took another camera, shot the screen it was being broadcast from, rebroadcast that, bounced it off a few places, and that was the final feed. So I know that people will pick holes in this all the time. What about all the photos, all that stuff? I'm telling you they didn't go. Here's the proof that they didn't go. The proof. There is a guy named Bart Sibrel who is hated amongst anybody that loves NASA because he is a conspiracy theorist who stumbled across footage that was accidentally mislabeled in the NASA archives. He is famous for taunting the astronauts and telling them all that they didn't go to the moon and approaching them directly and saying, swear in a Bible that you went to the moon, swear in a Bible. And there's famous footage of him actually getting punched in the face by Buzz Aldrin. And by the way, you guys, rightly so. That's not how you treat people regardless of what happened. I mean, I agree that Bart Sibrel might have been asking for it there.
Right.
But he was looking through the NASA archives. NASA notoriously does not label things correctly, and all this old footage is being lost and shifted to new warehouses and storage and mislabeled. Sure enough, it was mislabeled. He got a look at it, and this is exactly what it shows, and you guys can watch it to this day. It shows all 3 astronauts in the Apollo capsule. You can see them filming themselves in the capsule. They are talking to Mission Control, and they are saying that they are halfway to the moon. However, in their porthole, you can see that it is completely filled with blue, meaning they are still in an Earth orbit. The Earth is not off in the distance as a little blue marble. It's completely filling the porthole. Also, you can see the atomic clock showing how far away they should be. They're right there in a near Earth orbit. Okay. So the atomic clock. Yeah. So the atomic clock is showing, what time it is, what date it is, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So by that time, via the atomic clock and via the historical records, they should have been halfway to the moon. In reality, the porthole is being completely filled with blue. Now, Jeff, that's silly. Maybe that was just a blurry camera. How do you know it was all filled with blue?
And people can see this on YouTube, right?
Absolutely. And the footage exists, and NASA is not denying that it's real footage. They never denied it. They agree that that footage is real. So here's what it shows. Them taking a little transparency and putting it over the window so that it looked like, instead of it being the near Earth, right, the porthole being filled with blue, it looked like there was an event horizon. It looked like there was a little bit of a shadow over it. Then they turned out all the lights in the capsule, moved the camera back so that it looked like the darkness around the porthole was outer space. And the little blue window was little blue Earth. And the little transparency they're putting over it is the event horizon, as if it's, a shaded half Earth. They were basically recreating in the capsule live what it would look like to see Earth way off in the distance, and then sending that back to Mission Control.
Okay, and what would people Google on YouTube to find that right now?
Bart Sibrel.
Bart Sibrel, okay.
Moon, yeah, Bart Sibrel. I think it's Seibrel. Faking the moon landing. So it's absolutely 100% clear, right? Mm-hmm. You also hear a voice talking to them, where Mission Control is talking live to the inside of the capsule, and there's a third party that nobody describes, nobody identifies, and it just tells them when to talk and what to say. It'll simply say, talk. That is the military side of things. That is the Black Ops, military side. Okay. So these guys are basically puppets, and, it's not that they couldn't have gone to the moon. It's that we didn't want to risk them dying. We didn't want to lose face with the Russians, and we simply weren't quite ready to go. Plus, there's this alien presence bullshit, right? So, excuse my language. So
that's okay. That we didn't know.
Yeah. So there you go. So now, again, BS, Jeff. That's crazy. How could I not know about this? That's ridiculous. So Bart Sibrel very cleverly takes that footage and pretends that he's going to have an interview with Buzz Aldrin. And this is all videotaped. He takes Buzz Aldrin into a small room. Buzz Aldrin sits down to talk about the greatness of landing on the moon. Bart Sibrel starts showing him the footage of Buzz Aldrin faking the moon landing, right? Faking being way away from Earth when he's in a near Earth orbit. Buzz Aldrin doesn't say, well, no, that's not what that is. Let me explain that. As any normal, calm person would that went to the moon, right? Uh-huh. Why would you be defensive? No. Instead, Buzz Aldrin says, oh, I suppose now that you found that, you're going to be a famous person, huh? You're going to make yourself famous? Let me tell you something right now. If you show that to anybody, I will sue you. And this is all on tape.
Wow. So,
again, okay, circumstantial, maybe. But, and I realize my story is nearly impossible to prove, but it's backed, for me anyway, in my personal experience, with a whole bunch of legitimate witnesses that had nothing to gain, made no money off of it, only had ridicule to face as a result. And that is the backstory. Now, subsequently, they did go to the moon after that, but the first round didn't. And Neil Armstrong became a complete recluse after the moon landing.
Wow.
He didn't want to do appearances. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk to NASA. He became a complete recluse. And there is video footage of him much later on, decades later, talking to some of the young scientists and engineers at NASA. And this is on footage. You can actually go see it on YouTube. He says, for those of you who are, new to this, for all you engineers out there, there is great technologies out there still to be discovered, great breakthroughs to be learned once you can pierce one of truth's protective layers.
Wow.
That's almost exactly what he said. I know I'm off by a few words, but he said truth's protective layers. Now, nobody knew what he meant at the time. But again, in my opinion, the guilt of being perfectly capable of going to the moon and being a really great guy, but being told, sorry, dude, it's not going to happen. And also knowing that there's an, extraterrestrial presence there, and him being completely in on the military side of it, and probably being in the loop when it came to the technologies that we do have. This is a guy who was just kind of haunted his whole life.
Right. And obviously, that is his identity. That was his identity. Like, how do you,
Right.
And you know what? We'll take a break and come right back. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call, and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. It's interesting because he did a spot on Frasier where he sort of joked kind of in that same way. But, if that, it's such I can't imagine the pressure on you to not say anything in that situation.
Yeah. So these guys take their security oaths very seriously. You can imagine that's an incredibly important security oath. And then you got guys like Buzz Aldrin. So I go by people's reactions. I go by what people say. And I really strongly believe in credible witness testimony. I don't need to have everything proven to me perfectly. I still believe in human testimony. And when I see Buzz Aldrin being incredibly defensive, if you show that I'm going to sue you, I suppose you think you're going to be famous now, instead of just explaining what it was. Okay.
Right.
The same similar type of footage was shown to Edgar Mitchell, who also went to the moon. And Mitchell had the response of kicking him in the butt and telling him to get out of my house and how dare you. Again, look, why are you so defensive against this guy? I get that it's a mean thing that he's saying to you if you went to the moon, but why be so defensive? Why not say to the guy, look, this is exactly what this is. Let's talk about this. I'd be happy to discuss this with you rationally.
Right.
When he went up to Neil Armstrong, yeah, he was a total rude jerk. But Neil Armstrong's response wasn't, hey, I went to the moon, leave me alone, get the hell out of here, security, get him out of here. Neil Armstrong's response was, you don't deserve the truth.
Right.
Very strange choice of words.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's a very strange story, you guys. But again, it's my understanding and contention that Apollo 11 never made it. The subsequent missions did, but complicated by the fact that we've known long before that there's an alien presence, which was then discovered by mainstream NASA, not even the Black Ops. And therein lies a little bit of a problem, right? So,
right. And, I do remember hearing that story that of some astronauts that did actually see on the other side. And literally there were either beings or somebody waiting on that other side, like, don't step over here or don't point that camera over here.
That part I don't know. Yeah. But I guess, once you kind of have the basis there, nothing would surprise me. And, we have, so by the way, the moon itself, just, kind of last thing I wanted to say here about the moon, has so many very, very unusual anomalies about it, right? You pointed out one, which is the moon just happens to be the exact right circumference, and, diameter, to basically perfectly block the sun. Based on its distance, right? So its distance and size perfectly covers the sun in a lunar eclipse. Also, our seasons, right? Our tides. Everything is kept in this beautiful balance by its exact size and location. There are ancient cultures that have writings and teachings about the day that the moon simply appeared or arrived in the sky. There's some interesting stuff as well. They just found, get this, on the far side towards the South Pole, they just discovered that 180 miles beneath the surface is a incredible mass of metal. How big? 5 times the island of Hawaii. 180 miles beneath the surface, beneath a blast crater, is 5 times the size of Hawaii in metal that they just discovered on the moon. Now, this is not me making this up. This is mainstream news.
So, and you're thinking that's a city?
Well, I don't know about that, but it is a ongoing contention that the moon may be an artificial structure, composed of not just mineral on the outside, but might even be metal or some sort of artificial structure. There's lots of evidence to suggest that it may be hollow. For one reason, one of the times they were going around the moon, they dropped seismic equipment onto the surface, and the purpose was to measure earthquakes on the moon and see what kind of seismic activity occurred. It echoed, for my recollection, is days, right? Wow. As if they had hit a hollow area, right? So again, does this prove anything? No, it's just very fascinating, right? So
definitely not cheese. Yeah. It's definitely no cheese.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Plus, the outer crust is just kind of the wrong stuff.
When you say that, with the wrong stuff, you mean it's just not something a planet would be made of, or? Oops, I lost you.
There's a lot.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, from a geological standpoint, the composition of the rock and soil is very unusual. Stuff that normally wouldn't be on the surface is on the surface. Stuff that should be much deeper down is found on the surface. It's just unusual. It's almost like people are messing around up there. And by the way, speaking of UFO sightings, all kinds of objects, unidentified objects, have been seen and recorded by amateur astronomers and legitimate telescopes passing in front of the moon. So you look that up and see some fascinating footage. There's tons of it, but throughout history, there's all kinds of activity up there. So
yeah, and Bart Sibrel, Sibrel, you can look him up on YouTube. He's got a whole channel, and you know what's funny? Him being the type of guy that maybe ran up to Buzz Aldrin the wrong way and got hit.
For sure he did.
Also makes him sort of the right guy to have this information, like you said.
So plausible deniability. That's that nut job that tried to, mess with Buzz Aldrin and got punched. Oh, okay, good. Well, case closed. He's a jerk. And that's how the world looks at it.
Wow. I have a different question. So do you think, or are you not sure, what is your opinion? Are aliens friend or foe, or are they a little of each?
Well, I think I could answer this one without having ever met an alien, obviously. Mm-hmm. I would say that aliens are we're going to find are just that, completely alien and 100% unknown. So based on our limited, idealism I think also just based on our personal ideal of what it is to be moral and what it is to be conscientious and what it is to be spiritual, we're going to find that some of them are quote unquote benevolent and others appear malevolent. But when I say malevolent, are we malevolent when we, kill a bunch of ants in an ant nest? Are we malevolent when we kill bumblebees? Are we malevolent when we, eat animals? I mean, I just feel like maybe different conscious levels don't see each other as being, quite as important.
Right.
And also, let's not forget, these are just values that we've created. Who knows what an alien thinks or feels? So it is truly alien, right?
Right.
So hard to put a label on it.
And it's okay. So people, you thought that might have been crazy that we just talked you into thinking the moon landing might not have happened. I really think we are part alien DNA.
Well, that's a whole nother subject, which I have done a lot of research on. I'd love to talk to you about that sometime, because that goes back to the Sumerians and the Anunnaki, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that is, you're absolutely right, Karen, because humans have an inordinate amount of junk DNA, which is a calling card of genetic manipulation.
Yeah, and I'm fully convinced on that now, and I really think it's just I don't know. I also believe, I think we talked about this last time. I also believe that Westworld is sort of a weird series about what we are. I think we're code. I always say I'm the mean black prostitute in Westworld. That's who. They're all doing the same thing over and over. They're programmed to do the same thing over and over. And then some of them are starting to go, wait a minute, why do I remember this? Or what's this about? And they're kind of figuring it out. But I sort of am starting to think we are that, we're pretty simple beings if you figure, when you start thinking about how big the world is and the aliens and when you really get into it, I think we work code. Does that make sense? Computer code?
Sure. And yeah, no, totally. I mean, yeah. I mean, and the fact, you guys, that inside of you are trillions of little independent things that are alive that make you up, right? Mm-hmm. Little bacteria and living cells. Imagine the trillions of things that make you up, almost like a little mini universe inside of you. None of those individual things know that there's a Karen Rontowski or a Jeff Thill on the outer structure any more than we know inside this universe what the outer part of this universe even is, or multiverses. I mean, it's so mind-boggling on every level. Just try to think about the fact that this solar system is so vast, let alone a galaxy, 30,000 light years to the center, let alone one galaxy out of what we now know are billions and billions and billions and billions.
Okay, so I know that you guys, this is going to be a weird edit, but I know that at least at 51 minutes, this card was working. So my card filled up, so to speak. But this is so interesting, Jeff, and we're going to get back to Men in Black. We're going to start that topic again, and I only have 10 more minutes left to the podcast. So Jessarito, he says, watch when we start talking about this, the chaos. We'll be sitting in my apartment. It'll be completely quiet. And she'll go, watch the chaos start when we start talking about the Matrix. And sure enough, the conversation starts. The dogs outside start barking. The fire engines go by. The prime guy, all these different noises and distractions that happen, including, which I believe, I'm a little further out than you probably, Jeff, but I really do think when you start to wake up, you rift the Matrix, and everybody kind of goes, wait a minute, it goes back to my Westworld theory that we're all code, which is somebody's breaking the code, so everything kind of there's a wave of something that's not right. So that's my way. I won't even ask you to address that, Jeff, because I know that's way out. But as I was
I love talking about it. I would only be guessing, of course, but I think you could be very well right. Why not? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the card filled up. When I've been taping my podcasts, it seems like everything has been going wrong. So, we'll keep going here. So Men in Black, I said to you, I was saying how at the Mothman thing, the Men in Black showed up and UFOs were involved in the Mothman prophecy, that not in that book, but that they were around at that time. And so I had said to you, Men in Black, are they them or are they us? Are they the aliens or are they our people or are they both?
Yeah. Yeah. I would, of course, I would only be guessing, but, it's interesting. The Men in Black, the normal, folklore mythology or just eyewitness reports, right? I mean, I shouldn't even call it folklore because these are, credible witnesses oftentimes that are giving these reports, is that they seem out of place. They seem almost robotic. They definitely are usually wearing clothes that are, not quite right for the period.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it seems almost like they would not have been alien. Excuse me, they wouldn't be human. But who knows? And one of my favorite witnesses in the Disclosure Project was a gentleman named Clifford Stone. And Clifford is one of those people that a lot of folks may try to debunk because his story is quite unusual. But he, I think I might have mentioned this last time, Karen, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but Clifford, worked in a couple of projects whose job was to cover up scenes and situations where alien technology was recovered under the guise of this is a chemical spill, this is a biological spill, everyone get away. And his team would go in and extract the technology and or bodies, whatever was there. And when he was asked at the press briefing in Washington, D.C., quite a while ago, you say that you've seen aliens, sir. What do they look like? His answer was, that's hard to say, because when he left the program, and I believe he mentioned it was back in the 70s, there were, and I forgive me for not knowing the exact number, but I believe at the time he said there were well over a dozen identified alien species that we knew about. That was back then. So, gosh, who knows, right? Anything is possible. That's the one thing I've learned.
Right.
And a lot of stuff can happen under your nose, and really the world is way weirder than you think it is.
It is. And I also feel like, it's very weird. I know we have these kids now that are called star seeds that literally remember or kind of like, I'm not from this planet, or like right out of the chute. That's kind of what they're saying. And I do believe that. But I'll tell you, when that lady said, and y'all can laugh all you want, but when she said, you need to read, she didn't even know me. And she said, you need to read about the aliens from Orion. It could not have been a better description of me, to the color of my eyes, to the diet that I eat, to, it just is crazy. But I just think, that's part of that. And I feel it sometimes too, even reading tarot cards or being into all this, you feel that way of controlling people, which I'm sure next time, we'll have you on. Can I call you tomorrow? Talking about, are we alien DNA or controlling mankind or making the perfect slave, as we noticed you talked about a little bit before. That all fits into that category of, get a religion and also make people feel like it's just them and God. It's just us and God. Just ignore everything else. That can't help you. That's not part of you. And that to me seems like a human thing to control other humans.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think a lot of it has to do with how we've been, sort of genetically manipulated, almost programmed in a way.
Yeah.
We definitely have this brain chemistry that makes us prone towards religion or religious belief, and wanting to believe in a higher power and wanting to believe in a higher authority and wanting to be subservient to that. And I just have sort of a sarcastic suspicion that was encoded in us as a species as a control mechanism. And it's sort of a bummer. It's almost like putting a ankle bracelet on someone who's on house arrest.
Yeah. And we only have like 2 minutes left. So I'll it's part of my job. Like I have a lot of tarot clients that come back, and some of them, I know sometimes it's that voice, it's my voice saying to them, you don't have to do that, right? Or it's not like that. And it is almost like a computer program that they are having so much trouble overriding. And I know that maybe this is just language and it seems like it's the same as psychology. But, when we talk about consciousness, which we study in parapsychology, Facebook had a problem where they put two computers together. They wanted them to speak to each other to make some sort of a better Facebook page or whatever the hell they were doing. And the first thing that happened, they noticed the two computers talking to each other learned to negotiate. They learned to go, and the second thing they did was they created a different language that the people running the program couldn't understand. And that's when they took the whole thing down, like, no. But I feel like that's, as human beings, what we are. And right now, this phrase woke, which is being overused and diluted, and I don't think people know the real meaning about it, is, we're overriding the program. And I'm going to give you guys a heads up of somebody that's coming on my show. There was a videotape that got sent to me from Jessa on YouTube. And Jessa and I talk a lot about creating our own reality and timelines and jumping from this timeline to the next and having things switch. I know I'm a little off topic, Jeff, but I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll. Stand back.
Right on.
Or moving objects with our mind. That's part of what we study in parapsychology. And it's not about trying to push the object. It's about seeing the object already moved. So it's, again, we're jumping a timeline. Well, this guy, I emailed him and he said he's going to try and get a hold of me later. He has a computer program. He sells food delivery, or if you have a restaurant, he sells you food. And they're having trouble with the software. And he explains, he's like, we'll always be there for you, but let me explain the Mandela effect. Okay. Like, do you remember Stouffer's Stovetop Stuffing?
Mm-hmm.
There was never a company named Stouffer's. And if you look at the box, which the Kraft company will send you, for all these years, it has been Kraft Stovetop Stuffing. But half the population remembers Stouffer's Stovetop Stuffing. And these little things that make you think, wait a minute, so half the country got that wrong? And he's going to be on the show talking about, I don't know if he calls it exactly jumping timelines, but talking about the Mandela effect, which just...
I'm very, very familiar with the Mandela effect. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, your next project, though, is our alien DNA, Jeff. So I'm going to call you tomorrow.
I'm on it. I love it.
Jeff, thank you so much. Everybody, check out Majestic 12. Jeff, thanks for coming on. I think you and I need a TV show.
I love it, man. That would be so great, Karen. Yeah, absolutely. At the very least, let's talk more about that road show and the panel.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I wonder if we could do that in LA. Okay. Plans are being made. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. If you can leave me 5 stars or 2 stars or 4 stars, whatever you want, that would be great so I could get more reviews on there. Thanks to Mike Flynn at Uno Rising Media. Jeff Thill, great to talk to you again. Everybody, I will see you in September. One night I will be at the Tahoe Biltmore Paranormal Convention. And that's it, folks. Thanks. And we'll see you next week. Keep the emails coming.